Our next speaker is Clark Niewendorp, who is going to be speaking on mining gold in Oregon. Clark has been an exploration geologist in the Missouri lead zinc deposit area. He has also worked for the South Carolina Geological Survey, and before retiring in 2018, he was a geologist for the Oregon Department of Geology and Mineral Industries, or DOGAMI. Clark has recently served as the president of the Geological Society of the Oregon Country. He is now the past president, and he remains on the board and serves that organization. And he does a lot of field trips for that organization, and he has a few more things to say about some of his history. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Clark, who's going to tell us about mining gold in Oregon.
Thank you, Julian. Can you hear me? We're good to go? Okay. How do you follow that kind of eye candy? And then I have to be the opening act for Nick Zentner. I'm not in an envious place right now. So thank you for, and by the way, Niewendorp is Smith in Holland. So that's where that came from. So what you're seeing behind you is the GAMIs, which used to be called, what dog am I? That's what the locals would call us when we'd go out in the field, is the Oregon Department of Geology and Mineral Industries. This is the Oregon Geology, or Oregon Bureau of Mining Geology. They were Oregon's first survey, set up in 1911, and they were disbanded a year after this picture was taken in 1922. So you can see that's quite a field truck that they took out there. It's better. I think it's sometimes better than my field car that I would take out. These are two mine engineers. You can see that they've got their sack of gold, or the ore right there. They got a crusher on the back of that thing. Boy, that would be quite an experience. So we're going to talk about basically three parts. I'm going to talk about an introduction to give you an idea what Oregon has in terms of gold mineralization. Then we're going to talk a little eye candy. I've got some. Aaron Weeding over here has provided some outstanding photographs for me to use, and I want to thank him right now for that, acknowledge what he's done. And then we're going to talk about a few notable mines. I can't talk about them all, or we would be here all day, because I think any one of them is notable. But there's some big ones we'll talk about. So let's get started. This is my last technical publication for DOGAMI. It is the Mineral Information Layer for Oregon. It's release 4. So this was started to catalog all the minerals in Oregon, and this is what Oregon considers as its. USGS has the MSRD. We've got this. So this is what Oregon relies on for state government for their minerals. And it's been updated, and it's even got historical records tied behind it. And that was one of my last jobs with that. It was the most interesting. I got to go through all the mine maps we've got. You know what else is in this time? DOGAMI had one of the few states in the western United States that did assays for the general public, and they had 2 they could do a year. And they would assay, and it started in 1939, it went up to 85 before the last one was taken. And so this is the Southwest Oregon and Portland, so it's mostly Western Oregon, but there's 15,000 of them, assays. Baker Cities, which is over there, has their own set. If you're interested in host rocks, even if it had enough platinum, you could find out where the platinum is, particularly in the placers. So that's where that database has its usefulness. I will tell you that MILO, is what I call it, location data is much, much better because we're using LiDAR, particularly on the western side, because that was some of the work I did. As Julian pointed out, the first discovery of gold was up there in North Carolina in 1799. And I worked in South Carolina, and the gold belt extended down to us too. I don't have it there, but they were mentioned in New Mexico. But I want to point out that Oregon was in 1850 to 1851, and I'll show you next slide. We'll go into that a little bit more. So guess who had a 10-month head start to the gold fields in California before the news got to New York. Those settlers in Oregon had a 10-month head start and went down there, filled their pockets full of gold. Now, many of them did, some of them didn't. Came up to Oregon, had all that gold and couldn't spend it. Because Oregon in that days, in the 1850s, was a barter system and they traded wheat instead of gold. And then you can imagine after they started using gold, how all the schemes started to develop on that. So that's an interesting little side. Before that was Oregon came in the 1860s. And the reason the Eastern Oregon in the 1860s is because the cavalry wouldn't let the settlers settle in Eastern Oregon, send them through the Indian territories onto Portland. So it took a little while before that deposit was discovered. So down here is the discovery. Which one gets it, whether it's Josephine County or adjacent Jackson County, you can find it out. But I think Jackson County won because they put a little monument up there. So whoever does that claims it. You can see how it kind of spread out. It went up to the Cascades, up at the Bohemia district, just above 1858, and then it went over to the Canyon City area and in Auburn in Baker County. But you also notice here, that's a blue bucket mine. That was when the settlers claimed that somebody found nuggets, could never find where it went, and tried to find that lost blue bucket mine even today. So that was in 1845. And I have found newspaper articles that in the Willamette Valley that also stated that there was gold. They knew about the gold for about that time as well. Oregon had its share of gold. I mean, 5.8 million ounces isn't anything to be ashamed about. Kind of do some really loose math. It's $14 billion today. It's $2,600, $2,700 yesterday. That's not bad. And so these figures go from 1850 to 1865. There was 36 mining districts in 1902. That's kind of data I'm going to dwell on in the next couple slides. It came up to for 37 or 73 after the Oregon Bureau of Mines and Geology got into the picture and started to tabulate that all up. This is kind of my map I made. It's a draft. It was never published. Dagami in those days is not in the mining. They kind of got their mining program back with critical minerals. But back in those days, when I worked for them, I was the black sheep of the department. God, they didn't know what to do with me. So I, on my own, kind of drafted, or this is it coincided with another project. But you can see here, the black dots are all the gold deposits, kind of their distribution throughout the state. The red areas are the most likely areas for gold mineralization. And there's a couple factors that go into this. It's mostly volcanic rocks, but another one that's most helpful, you never guess it was agate, is the distribution of agates. It was very helpful in drawing this map. You can see here that we've got a couple areas here, and I'll go from the coast. So we got the beach deposits that, are the blue here. And then we've got the Cretaceous, Jurassic areas here, southwest Oregon, and up there, the blue area. That up there is the Blue Mountains. And then the Cascades, and the Umpqua, and then the Pueblo Mountain areas. Now, Pueblo Mountain's just got a couple deposits. It's pretty scat in that area. So, and I'm going to try to do some eye candy in this one. And with this eye candy, I'm going to try to give you a little bit of the mine context with it. And I have a few examples. When I started to try to find this thing, there's not a lot out there. And then Aaron showed me his picture of the specimen he had that was, I'll show you, that was highlighted on Rocks and Minerals in an issue of recent issues. That's kind of got me started on thinking maybe I'll start around 1905. You know why? 1905, Portland decided it was going to reinvent itself and have the Lewis and Clark Exposition and Fair. And in that fair, they had they not only had agriculture, but they also tried to highlight their minerals. And so they had a mineral building. And one of the displays they had, one of the displays they had, and I'll get it's the next slide, but this one's the precursor to it. This one is the first slide comes from this area in the Cascades. And there's not too many pictures I have of the Cascades of Goldberg, or there are pictures I have of the Cascades, but I just wanted to kind of give you the overview of this. So there's 5 mining districts in the Cascades, starting at the north from the North Santiam going down to Bohemia. I'm going to talk about the North Santiam, the Quartzville, and then I've got a picture or two of the Bohemia. So those are all Goldberg districts. They were found in 1858, if you recall. These are arc-generated gold deposits. So here we go. So this one is called the Ogle Mine. I'm going to, with another guy, we're going to do a little bit of work on that. It is hard to get to. It's gated off, so there are lots of artifacts there. But this is a display that they had at the Lewis and Clark Exposition, and it sure doesn't look like the eye candy that came out from the Eagle Crest, does it? Hardly. But I don't know the scale of this thing, but this one took honorable mention as a display at the Lewis and Clark Exposition. So this gives you an idea what it looked like. So the mineral buildings were up there. And the rest of it highlighted California, Washington. There's even a couple foreign exhibits in this one. But if you're familiar with this and you know Portland area, this is up in North Portland. It's up there where the Montgomery Ward's building used to be. So that's up there close to the Willamette and the Columbia River junction. And at first I looked at this picture. This was the only picture I could find of what the minerals look like, mineral exhibits. And then I looked, I said, well, is that 4,000 or 40,000? It's 40,000. How many dump trucks is that? That's a big Terex truck, but that's 3 to 4 dump truck loads of gold specimens, generally gold specimens, came from mostly Southwest Oregon or Western Oregon and the Cascades. Southwest Oregon or Eastern Oregon wasn't too involved with this, but there was an investment company that had a display or two up there too. So there was quite a bit of minerals of specimens being shown. Washington had one, California, of course, even Arizona did. So just to remind you, we're going to go to Quartzville, which is number 2 on this map. And we're going to start looking at most of what the eye candy I have for what this presentation has. I do want to tell you, this is a mine in the central part of the district, and you can still go with a hammer, and you can still go up there and just go, hit what they call them reefs up there, or ledge, and hit a piece of gold off. So my friend Joe, that's what he did with this specimen right here. Pretty interesting. So what we really want to show you is start to show you this stuff. So there's 2 specimens here from 2 museums. The one on the left, as you're facing, that gold specimen's from the Santiam mine. And the Santiam mine is a mystery mine. We don't really know where it's not on any of the maps. It's not in any of the books. But I think we know, Aaron and I kind of know where this one is. It's, and I'll show you that here in a little while. But this one is in the American Museum of Natural History in New York. And this was exhibited at one of the Paris World Fairs in 1896. 1896, by the way, is when this mine generally closed and it was no longer active. It oxide ore was exhausted and there was no free gold to mine anymore. The one next to it is in Philadelphia at the Drexel University at their display. I'm not an expert, but there's dendritic gold here, there's plate gold here on this other one. So I'll leave that up to the experts in here to go over that. But there's some beautiful specimens that have came out of cascades, which, really no one really thought about after that. But there's also even more. In the Yale Peabody mine, I show 3 specimens here, but there's at least 5 or 6 pictures that they have of specimens that were collected at the White Bull mine, which is the Saniam mine, probably the Lauer mine too. These are all private properties. I mean, they're patented. But this one is also, these specimens are studied by, well, everybody should be familiar with them. This gentleman here is Dana. I studied him. I had the green book. I think I'm old enough to have the green book, so of mineralogy. So there we go. So that's a couple pieces of samples that came out of there. And then this is the Aaron sample. And this is the cover of the Rock and Minerals that his picture was displayed or published on. The picture up on the right, up the corner is well, Aaron didn't collect it there, but I know you can collect wire gold there. Did I ever get any? No. Joe took me up there to find it. He's always got them. But you can get wire gold. And in this case, the story is that this gold always rides the iron horse here. And it's whenever you find these iron seams in these highly silicified rocks, that you start digging. It's likely you might find some gold in that. Aaron, I believe, found his gold somewhere along this dump. Right? Yeah. Yep, because I walked that dump and I didn't see any. Yeah, he cleaned it off. So here's what his gold samples look like. They're stunning photographs right here. And these, there's experts here that can tell me what the habits are here, but I always call this dendritic. I'm not a gold guy, I'm a lead zinc guy, and we call them dendrites. And we always get bars, and we would get these kind of dendritic growths, which in our cases were all supersaturation, effects of supersaturation. It's sitting on this is sitting on sphalerite, and there's other minerals associated with it, but I believe, Aaron, you actually thought of calcites, right? Now we're going to go south down to Bohemia. This is the southernmost of the Cascade ore deposits, although there are some down to the south, even farther south in Oregon, but this is the main one. This is the biggest one. It is not necessarily the longest producer. The central part of this district is centered around Bohemia Mountain, which is down here on the bottom of your screen. The mines here, Champion, the Music, and Helena, and the Annie mine, which is the Noonday mine, are all now eventually became part of the Champion mine, our Champion group. And there's only 2 specimens that I could find that came out here, kind of a cylindrical or a tabular gold and some of this chunkier gold. And that's all I could find. This is all the pictures that I spent a fair amount of time looking on the internet. And I've been to lots of shows, and I have not, in the shows I've gone to, there's been no gold specimens that I've seen come out of Oregon. There you go. That's the bulk of the gold specimens. I'm sure I've got a few more, though, that we're going to look at. So we're going to go down to southwest Oregon. And so I've kind of split this map up the physiographic provinces. This is a modification of ores, Oregon Geology, 1999. So we're going to go down the Klamath Mountains with this lower left, and the Blue Mountains up to the upper right. Those are all Cretaceous Jurassic. So those are all the older accreted terrains. We won't go into the geology if I don't have time. Imagine what that would look like in color. So that's all placer gold. And so that's one of the first gold placers, one of the bigger placers in Oregon. And you can see from the inset map where the red dot is, that's its general location. And if you squint, here's where Grants Pass is located. Now what I'm going to show you next this is kind of my segue into this. One of the more recent discoveries was this first blood pocket. It was at the Humdinger mine in Josephine County. And it was in 2013, and I got to go there, and I got to see this. In fact, I have a small piece of this in my collection. But what I want to kind of go off on a little bit of a tangent is, I don't know how you guys find your samples, particularly your collectors, but if you guys don't use LiDAR and just rely on word of mouth or a topo map or even Google Earth, which I find is hard to use, you know, it's LiDAR. It's what I used when I went out and looked for I call them the mine holes, adits, trenches, pits, or any kind of abandoned mineland feature. And Oregon has their outlet, and I'm sure Washington does too. I'm not familiar with all of their coverage, but Oregon's coverage is growing, and it should be statewide after not too long from now. But I'm showing you a couple of different things that I do as part of my job, and it still haunts me when I'm retired. I've been retired now for 5 years. Is I use the LiDAR, and I use GIS to play with it. However, this stuff is off their Degami LiDAR website. And when I was there, I made a request that they do not limit how far that you can magnify this stuff. So the resolution you can get down to a meter on this. They'll pixelate on you, but it's very good stuff. But I mean, so what I'm going to show you next here is that we're going to go and take a little closer look. So there's the Humdinger mine, and you are going to, after using LiDAR, you're going to recognize patterns, shading patterns. You're going to be able to recognize roads, pits, dumps. If it's got a big enough dump in them, you can start to call them adits, recognize trenches without a problem. And then I discovered that you can also get some free stuff off of QGIS, which is another free GIS out there, and it's called Skyview Factor Approximation. And all you have to do is press a button. You don't have to do any calculations. It will generate this for you. You may have to georeference it later on, but you still get something that looks like that. And the approximation for Skyview approximation gives you ledges, ridges, and holes. And this is an archaeological kind of a derivation. And that is in the Cascades. You would, when the green veil is lifted off, is stunning. And instead of, like I did for many years, was get tired of crawling up the canyons and stopping about 100 feet before I would find the adit, and then have to go back 2 or 3 times later. Now you can actually find the trails up to those adits. So that's Skyview Factor. So I'm not lying to you. That's what the adit or the portal looks like to the Humdinger mine. That's where the gold came out not too far from where they've got the path into it. It is now collapsed, so you can't get into it now. Another pocket that was discovered, and I kind of have an association or a connection with, like we talked about later, is the Briggs pocket. There's that pocket come into it. This is not a pocket, it's a vein, and it's got a massive gold in it, and quite a bit of massive gold, by the way. The story is that this the son of this Briggs family founded deer hunting, and this is on a very precipitous slope out there in the middle of nowhere in God's country. You can see this family, and there's a little bit of they're kind of got a family story behind this one too. We won't go in there. This is what a specimen of this gold looked like, and this is just collected off the ground and cleaned. And this is at Josh Baumacher's and Tom Baumacher's, if you've heard of those two. This is from one of their videos. They claim that they found it, but I will have to argue with them because I think that Bill Adams found this pocket or rediscovered the pocket and then showed them. So that's the collection. That's part of the 27 pounds of material that came off of the bottom of the slope. So that's a fair amount of gold. So the actual pocket, if you will, and I don't like using that, but I will here. The pocket is way up the hill, and they hydraulic the pocket, and water is scarce too in West Southwest. And this is all the stuff that fell off their sluices and rolled down the hill. So let's go to Eastern Oregon. It's too bad we just have have black and white pictures, but this is kind of the segue into it. So this is just, I don't know where this picture or where this gold of this picture came from. It does show you that quite a bit of it. We're going to start basically over in the Canyon City district. It is amazing how much gold this canyon carried, and the amount of dredging they did on the John Day River below it. It's just and there's no mother lode. I mean, there's no big mine that can claim that all the gold came from it. You know, it's not like Bohemia. It's got a cluster of mines where all the gold that's in the placer that's below the Bohemia mining area, for example, you can't point your finger to it. So, but you can see that in the next picture, this is where it is. This is the digging map. You can get some claim information from this. There are other sources for this as well. We use this quite a bit in the mining clubs that I belong to. And it kind of gives you an idea of what's been claimed and where to look. The next couple of slides I've got shows you some crystalline gold that came from that circular or the oblong area. It's highlighted in yellow. This is the Centipede mine or the Centipede prospect. There's a couple of them up in there according to the Milo, that database that I've got. These are photographs that Aaron provided me with. You can show that some quite attractive gold came from there. We're going to move to Baker City, and who hasn't been to Baker City and dropped by the National U.S. Bake and looked at the gold display there? I mean, that was the first thing they took me when I went to Baker City to see. So Aaron's his wife got to hold this, right? Yeah. We can do it. So there it is. So there's quite a collection of nuggets there, and that came from Susanville, 1913 is where this has been traced to. Even my department had gold samples in our Baker City office, and those are a couple of them. Those are the only two pictures they ever have of the gold samples, but it's there. And now this is probably displayed at the Natatorium in Baker City. I think when that office was pseudo-disbanded because of budget cuts, all the collections were moved to that museum. All right, a few notable mines. Again, I'm going to make a disclaimer here. These are just a few. I've missed some. And we're going to start in Southwest Oregon, and we're going to start with probably the most profitable one, and that's the Greenback. You can see where it's located by the arrow and the orange dot. It is just north of Grants Pass, if you can make that out. It is, as you can see here, there's 4 of these sponge gold, what do they call it, biscuits. And I think they're about, last time I kind of calculated it was close to $75,000 there right now, today's money. And again, this is sponge gold, and it's probably 60 to 70% gold. And Oregon's gold is just like California's, it's about 80%, maybe even a little less with copper and silver as it's amalgamated with the two minerals here. Next one is the Benton mine. These fellows, they were flying under the radar, and we're out in the Benton mine, and this is a granodiorite stock. It's still got 0.5 ounces per ton gold reserves still in it. They had to close because they went afoul with the regulatory agency and had a discharge. They didn't have any bond money to work after that, so that's unfortunately for them. But they put a dory bar on the internet, and guess what happens when they do that? The regulatory agencies watch this stuff too, and that's what happened. So they were put under the magnifying glass after that. But that's a long-lived mine, shut down in '42 and then came back to life in 2005. So you could probably say that was the only mine, or was a kind of a working mine even in the early 2000s. The next one is, it's the Ashland mine. It's down there near Ashland. It has probably got the most extensive ore chute in southwest Oregon, 1,000 foot long. Basically, it's part of this, the mines I've just showed you made well over $3 million. This one did too, the Benton has, and the rest of them. So this one has a sputtered, somebody's looking at it right now, but I don't know if it'll ever go because it's too close to Ashland to be mined. Now on to Eastern Oregon, and we're starting to look at that blue great mother lode stuff of the Blue Mountains. You can see up there at the inset map, we're not too west of Baker City. And I've got highlighted two mines, the Buffalo, and then we're going to go look at the, I call it the Golconda, Columbia, North Pole, that trend in there with the Excelsior in there as well, E&E. So this is, first lode was in 1866 here, about 8 years after first placer was discovered. And that's usually how it trended even in southwest Oregon. First the placers, then between 5 and 10 years is when they started to develop the lode mines. Placer doesn't last long. So here's the Buffalo. It's the largest in areas. They're even mining into the sulfides to get the gold, and they had a flotation system in the 60s. So this is what it looked like in 1958. You can see the portal still there, and people still look at it. I think this is still considered a target by exploration tonight. Some exploration companies are looking at some of this stuff right now. And of course, you've got this. If anybody's been to Bourne, and or even gone in and looked at the dredge there at Sumter, this is the trend that goes through the canyon above Bourne, starting at the Golconda, Columbia, the E&E, and then the North Pole mine. You can see that this mine was quite a producer, $8 million. It only had a brief period, not more than 10, 15 years. It's still open to depth. It is still open in a couple other directions. It carries quite a bit of arsenic, and that's probably why it's not attractive to mining companies now. We're going to go to Cornucopia. And this is, it's 10 miles from halfway. Now that doesn't tell you much, but it's in Pine Canyon. And you can see it's circled there on the topo map. And the way people got from the town below, in a lot of cases, was to hitch a ride on the ore bucket. And the miners would go up and work up there. This one, in the 1940s, was the 6th largest in the United States. So Oregon did have somebody that placed well in the gold Olympics. And they worked 2 veins. The veins are still open. The L208 shut them down in 1942. They looked to start it back up, and it never happened. So this is still laying there. I guess if someone had the money and wanted to redevelop it, go back in there and see what they could do. There's 36 miles of tunnels of this, so this was quite a large operation. And there is a sample out there that's on the internet that shows some of the gold that came out of there. It's not a real pretty specimen gold, but I would keep it in my collection. So I've got recommended reading for you, just like a previous speaker did. So if you haven't read Lindgren's 1900s, The Gold Belt of Blue Mountains, you need to read it. It applies to every district in Oregon, to just about all the vein systems in Oregon, regardless of whether they're epigenetic or meso. It still applies. And he writes it in a way that is no geochemistry, because they didn't have it in those days. It's just very descriptive, well written, and I recommend you do that. I mentioned that the Oregon Bureau of Mines and Geology, those are the 4 green ones above. Those are my Bibles I use to answer people's questions. And there is the first catalog of all the mines in Oregon. So if you're interested in a genealogy or a pedigree of some of the places you've been to, then I suggest you look at that. Diller's is on the bottom, and then we've got Stafford's, 1904, and then the 2 Bibles that Oregon, I call it the Yellow Book and then the White Books. So it's 19. So these are the handbooks that Oregon generated of all the mines and gold mines. The handbook, the white one is lists them all, and then the gold one is Howard Brooks and Lynn Ramps. Classic work for Oregon. And you can still find them out there. But you know, if you go to this website that I've got listed there, you can download them for free. So I'm done. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, burning questions? Yes, Bob.
Yeah, this is kind of an odd one, kind of a family, I guess, legend. My grandmother had said that her grandfather, so that would be my great-great-grandfather, had a module or mine lease in Oregon, gold mine. And when she was like super old, I said, okay, where was that? And she said, Long Creek. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, we could find that.
Can you repeat the question?
Bob said that he's got some family connections with gold mines in Oregon. One in particular is on Long Creek. And with that, I'd say, Bob, okay, give me about 2 hours, and I'll go and I will look through my stuff, and I will give you a call back or write you an email, and I would give you what I found on that. And that was part of my job at Degami, was to answer those kind of questions.
Thank you very much, Clark, for filling us in on Oregon gold. All right, we're going to keep on time. We're going to get back here at 2 o'clock, so there's time for you to go walk to your car, drive somewhere, walk somewhere for lunch. And we'll be back here at 2 o'clock for Nick Zentner's talk on Liberty Mine Gold.